At Greenridge Academy, the oldest, richest, whitest prep school on the East Coast, lunchtime was its own kind of battlefield. The kind with no bruises visible from the outside. Unless you were the only black scholarship kid in the entire school, like Molly Carter, and on that winter afternoon, under a chandelier worth more than his mother's annual salary, Malik learned exactly what his place was supposed to be. "Hands off our table, charity boy." The voice came from behind him, lazy, amused, practiced. Ethan Whitmore, son of a senator, captain of the lacrosse team. Golden hair, perfect smile, and a cruelty he wielded like a family heirloom. Malek froze. Tray in hand, he hadn't even touched their table. He was just walking by it, but Ethan didn't care about facts. He cared about the performance because 300 students in that dining hall knew the script. Rich white kids at the top. Black scholarship kid at the bottom. Ethan stepped in front of him, blocking the next aisle. Two of his shadows, Chase and Hunter. Mirror images of money and entitlement flanked him, smirking. "Come on, Malik," Ethan said loudly. "Soften the carpet for us. That's what financial aid students are for, right?" Laughter rippled across the room. Not loud. Not eruptive. Just enough to let Malik know he was alone. He forced himself to breathe through his nose. Keep moving. Keep quiet. Survive the moment. But Ethan wasn't done. He slapped Malik's tray out of his hands. Food splattered across the cream-colored rug. Marinara sauce blooming like a wound. A teacher looked up. Saw who was involved. Looked back down. Malik. Swallowed hard. He wanted to scream, wanted to fight, but experience had already taught him one truth. If he defended himself, he'd be aggressive. If they attacked him, it was boys being boys. Ethan leaned in close. "You don't belong here, Malik," he whispered. "You know it. We know it. Don't worry. Graduation is soon. Then you can disappear forever." Graduation. Escape. Freedom. That was the only thing Malik held on to. But then Ethan grinned. "Oh, almost forgot. We're planning something special for the 10-year reunion. You'll love it." Chase laughed. Hunter snorted. Malik didn't yet understand. Not until years later. When the message arrived, the message that would ignite everything, because they didn't invite him back to reconnect. They invited him to mock the life they were sure he'd failed to build. They never imagined he'd show up at all. They especially didn't imagine he'd show up from the sky. In a helicopter. One he owned. *** Greenridge. Academy marketed itself as the birthplace of tomorrow's leaders. But Molly Carter learned quickly that leaders, in their language, meant something else entirely. It meant old money. Old legacies. Old power passed from white hands to white hands without ever being questioned. He was none of those things. Malik earned his place top grades, statewide math champion, community service awards, but once he arrived, the school made sure he felt like he'd slipped through a door that should have stayed locked. Teachers treated him like a guest in someone else's home. Parents treated him like a warning label for their daughters. Students treated him like entertainment. And the worst of it, everyone pretended it wasn't happening. Greenridge loved to brag about its diversity numbers. 1. Black student every few years provided the perfect brochure photo. Malik was the photo. *** His mother, Angela Carter, believed Greenridge would open doors no regular school ever could. She never saw the cafeteria tables that went silent when he walked by, the group chats that called him Charity Kid, the way teachers looked surprised when he slept, side eyes at his clothes, his hair, even the lunch he brought at home. He stayed quiet, didn't want to worry her, didn't want to break her heart. He just said, "School's good, Mom, I'm learning a lot." Which was technically true. He was learning how racism operates without slurs. How it bruises without fists. How it hides behind politeness and power. Ethan didn't invent the hierarchy at Greenridge. He just inherited the throne. His father donated buildings. His mother chaired the board. His name alone protected him even when everyone knew he was wrong. Ethan had the freedom to be cruel with confidence of someone who never heard no. The privilege to rewrite narratives in real time. The audience, who always laughed because they feared him more than they respected him. Malik. He had none of that, but what he did have was something Ethan underestimated. Hunger. Fire. A refusal to stay small. *** Halfway through freshman year, Malik was called into the counselor's office. Miss Porter smiled politely, the kind of smile adults used when they'd already made up their mind. Malik, we're proud of how hard you're working, she began, but Greenridge can be challenging. Some students find the transition overwhelming. Malik frowned. Are my grades low? Oh, your grades are fine, but academically strong students sometimes struggle socially here. He understood instantly. This wasn't a check-in, this was a warning. Gentle nudge to stop trying to sit with students like Ethan, a coded message. Stay in your place. He thanked her and left quietly. The humiliation burned. Asterisk, asterisk, 2 weeks later, someone slammed his locker shut on purpose, hard enough to pinch his fingers until they bled. He turned around. Ethan leaned against the wall, smiling like he'd just watched a magic trick. "Aw," Ethan said. "Does the scholarship not cover Band-Aids?" Laughter erupted behind him. A teacher walked past. Saw the blood. Saw the crowd. Said nothing. Because when Ethan did something, it wasn't bullying. It was boys being boys. It was horseplay. It was kids figuring things out. When Malik reacted, it was anger issues. Defiance. Out of line. He learned to swallow everything. Anger. Pain. Humiliation. He swallowed it until it turned into something else. Fuel. Asterisk, asterisk, there were 2 people who treated him like he deserved to be there. One. Jordan. Greenea, quiet Haitian-American kid from Bridgeport, one of the few other students of color. Brilliant. Introverted, funny only when he trusted you. He would later become Malik's Kodash founder. 2. Mr. Ellis's Black history teacher. Former professor. Never talked down to him. Never treated him like he was lucky to be there. Always said, make them uncomfortable. Malik. Excellence scares people who've built their world on low expectations. Malik held onto that. Asterisk, asterisk by senior year. Everyone assumed Malik would disappear into some small local job. Ethan even said it as Malik crossed the stage. Good luck. Out there, charity case. Real world doesn't hand out scholarships. Malik didn't respond, didn't look back. As he walked out of Greenridge for the last time, he promised himself one thing. If he ever came back, it would be on his terms. Not theirs. He didn't know. Yet how far he'd go. How high he'd climb. How violently the power dynamic would flip one day. But the seeds were planted, and so were the scars. Asterisk, asterisk. The reunion invitation arrived as an email. Subject line. Greenridge class of 2014, 10 years. Already! He almost deleted it. Until he saw who sent it. Ethan Whitmore. Underneath the invitation, another message leaked from an old classmate followed. $20 says he shows up in secondhand suit. My guy probably still takes the bus. Ethan Malik stared at the screen. Not with anger. Not with pain. With clarity. They still thought he was small. Still thought they defined his worth. Still thought nothing had changed. They had no idea. No. Clue. No warning. They didn't know the man he'd become. They didn't know he had built something powerful. And they definitely didn't know that the helicopter Ethan used to joke about. Malik didn't rent a. He owned it. Asterisk, asterisk for 10 years. Malik never once thought about going back to Greenridge Academy, not once. He had built a life so far beyond that school's narrow imagination that revisiting it felt like stepping into a house he'd already burned down. But that leaked message. $20 says he shows up in a second-hand suit. Probably still takes the bus. It didn't hurt him. It revealed them. Their world hadn't changed. Their mindset hadn't matured. They still saw him as the boy on financial aid. Not the man who now employed over 500 people. The ignorance was almost funny. Almost. Asterisk. Asterisk. Malik forwarded the message to Jordan the same. Jordan, who sat with him at the only safe lunch table back in high school. Jordan called instantly. You're not going, right? Malik paused. I don't know yet. Jordan exhaled sharply. You do know. You just don't want to say it out loud. Say what? That you want closure. Malik stared at the email again. Not anger. Not revenge. Just a quiet certainty settling into his chest. They think we disappeared, Malik said softly. Jordan didn't argue. They think you stayed exactly where they left you. A beat. Then Jordan added, if we go back on our terms. Asterisk, asterisk, 10 years had reshaped Malik's whirled in ways even he still couldn't fully process. Community college, too. Full-time jobs, late-night coding sessions, a transfer scholarship to Stanford. A dorm room. Startup born from necessity. Productivity. Software for overworked remote team. 2 years earlier, Malik earned his pilot's license. Flying became a kind of therapy for him, giving him moments of silence, solitude, and freedom above the noise. When an aviation company went bankrupt, he purchased their remaining fleet, which included 6 helicopters, 2 charter routes, and several medical transport partnerships. He rebranded the entire operation as Carter Air. Most people didn't even know he owned it, not even many of his employees. It wasn't for bragging. For Malik, it symbolized what he wished he'd had at 17, proof that the people who doubted him were wrong. Now, staring at the reunion invitation, Malik felt something he hadn't felt since high school. He had a choice again. He could hide or rise, shrink or return, and let their story define him or finally write his own. Meanwhile, at a coffee shop in Greenridge, Ethan held court with his old crew, acting like the king he still believed he was. Chase stirred his latte and said, "Bro, I still can't believe you invited Malik." Ethan smirked over the rim of his cup and replied, "Relax, man. It'll be funny." Hunter snorted and added, "Imagine he actually shows up." Ethan shrugged and said, "I hope he does. Every reunion needs comic relief." They all laughed. None of them noticed the girl at the next table, Ava Martinez, class of 2014, the daughter of a school janitor and one of the few students who ever treated Malik kindly. She recognized every voice. That night, she sent Malik screenshots of the entire conversation, followed by a message that read, "You don't owe them anything, but I hope you show them everything." A week later, the head of alumni relations emailed Ethan and asked, "Are you sure inviting Malik Carter is appropriate?" The word appropriate hung there like a warning. A black student's presence at his own reunion was being questioned. Ethan replied, "He's harmless." Malik saw that email too, because Ava sent it to him. The cracks in the system were showing, not new cracks, but old ones everyone had been pretending not to see. The night before the reunion, Malik stood on the rooftop of his Tribeca loft, the city lights stretching in every direction. Jordan stepped beside him and asked, "You ready?" Malik admitted he wasn't sure. Jordan told him, "You're not going there to prove anything. You already won." Malik shook his head and said, "This isn't about winning." Jordan asked him what it was about. Malik looked out over Manhattan and said, "At 17, I wanted to vanish. At 28, I just want to honor the kid who survived long enough to become me." Jordan nodded and said, "Then tomorrow is for him." The next afternoon, Malik arrived at the Carter Air hangar. The pilots greeted him with a salute, and he waved it off gently. Jordan reviewed the flight path. Perfect. Weather, clear visibility, minimal wind. One pilot, Eric, asked if they should drop Malik off directly on the lawn. Jordan answered for him, saying no. He's flying it himself. The crew exchanged glances. Malik admitted he hadn't flown the H-130 in a while, but Jordan assured him he would do fine because he always did. At the country club, Ethan strutted through the decorated hall as if he owned it. Parents greeted him, teachers congratulated him on his promotion at his father's firm, and his fiancée Lavra smiled politely with the tired expression of someone who had been pretending for too long. Ethan checked his watch and said, "No." Sign of the charity kid. Chase grinned and said, "Told you he wouldn't come." But Lavra wasn't celebrating. She quietly asked Ethan why he invited someone he clearly looked down on. Ethan shrugged and said, "Because it's fun." Lavra asked, "Fun for who?" Ethan ignored her. Outside, the sky began to darken, not because of clouds, but because of sound. A low hum grew louder, turning into a vibration that people could feel in their chests. Guests stepped onto the terrace, asking what the noise was. Ethan didn't bother looking up until someone whispered, "That's a helicopter." Another person asked if it was landing there. Then a third voice said, "Wait, is that Carter Air?" Ethan's laughter died immediately. He recognized the logo. And somewhere deep inside, he realized the night was about to shift in a way he could never undo. The helicopter descended over the country club with smooth control, impossible for anyone to ignore. Wind whipped across the terrace as tables shook and glasses rattled. People shielded their faces as the rotor wash surged through the air. A hush fell when the helicopter touched down, the kind of silence reserved for moments no one ever forgets. Ethan stepped outside just as the cabin door opened. His smirk disappeared. It wasn't a charter logo. It wasn't a rental. It wasn't a stunt. The branding made it clear: Carter Air, owned by Malik Carter, the same scholarship kid they had spent 4 years trying to crush. Lavra whispered, "Ethan." "He owns that." Ethan's jaw tensed. No. No, he doesn't. It has to be something else. But when Malik stepped out wearing a tailored black suit, with calm posture and the confidence of a man who built his own world, everyone understood. The truth. Gasps spread across the terrace. "That's Malik? No way. He looks incredible. He flew here? Is he the pilot? Carter Air is his?" Ethan felt his stomach drop. Nothing about Malik matched who he used to be. This man wasn't small. He wasn't scared. He wasn't invisible. He was composed, elegant, and completely unshakable. Malik approached the terrace with Jordan behind him while the pilot stepped aside respectfully. The crowd parted around him without needing to be asked. Malik didn't puff his chest or flex. He didn't have to. His presence said everything. Ethan forced a smile and said, "Malik, wow, you came." Malik shook his hand and replied, "Good to see you, Ethan." Ethan's palm was already sweating. He asked whether Malik chartered the helicopter. Malik simply said, "No, I flew my aircraft." A sharp silence fell. Someone dropped a glass. Lavra covered her mouth and whispered, "He's the owner. He's the actual owner." That was when everyone began searching him online. Phones came out, fingers tapped. Gasps spread quickly as people discovered the truth. Stanford graduate, tech founder, 500 employees. $2-100-40-million valuation, magazine features, keynote speeches, and even acquisitions. He had turned down. Someone held up their phone showing a headline from Forbes, 30 under 30 Malik Carter. A circle formed around him as people asked questions about his company, how he built it, and how he scaled it so quickly. Every new detail broke another layer of the old hierarchy. Ethan watched helplessly as his influence evaporated exactly the way he once stripped Malik of dignity. Mr. Ellis approached with slow, steady steps. Malik's expression immediately softened when he saw him. They hugged, and the room noticed. The respect in the air was unmistakable. Someone asked Malik why he came to the reunion. He answered quietly that he returned for the younger version of himself who thought he'd never escape Greenridge. And tonight, he wanted that version to see that he did. The crowd fell silent, moved by the honesty in his voice. Ethan tried to regain control by forcing a laugh and pretending that everyone turned out fine, calling high school kids messing around, but his words fell flat. Malik looked at him calmly and said Ethan hadn't been messing around. He had been teaching the entire school how to treat him, and they followed his lead. Malik told him none of it made him strong, only loud. He added that he didn't come to punish Ethan, but because he outgrew the world, Ethan tried so hard to trap him in. Someone tapped a glass and asked Malik to speak to the class. The crowd cheered. Malik gave a thoughtful speech about how the school conditioned him to think small, how he had to unlearn that, and how no one should underestimate what someone might be building in silence. He said he didn't break, and anyone else feeling invisible should remember that one day people will have no choice but to see them. The room rose in a standing ovation. Everyone stood except Ethan. The applause still echoed when Malik stepped down from the center of the terrace. He wasn't basking in the moment. He'd already moved on internally. But the crowd hadn't. People rushed to him. Not to congratulate his success, but to confess their shame. Ava approached first. "I'm sorry, Malik. I should have spoken up back then." "I didn't. I let them treat you like..." Malik stopped her gently. "You were kind to me when others weren't. That mattered." Her eyes glistened. Then Chase, Ethan's old sidekick, approached. His voice cracked. "I was cruel. No excuse." "I'm sorry," Malik nodded. "I appreciate that. Hunter followed, head down like a scolded child. "I laughed at everything Ethan said. I didn't think about what it did to you." "You're thinking now," Malik replied. "And that's a start." One by one, they came. Girls who had avoided him, boys who had mocked him, teachers who had stayed silent, administrators who turned their eyes away for years. Each apology chipped away at the walls of the old hierarchy, not because Malik needed their guilt, but because they finally needed their own humanity back. Ethan watched it all from his chair. He looked like a statue of himself, hollow, cracked, abandoned. Lavra sat beside him, hands trembling. "You never told me what you did to him," she said softly. Ethan's throat tightened. "What are you talking about?" "We were just, don't say kids being kids, Ethan, don't." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "You lied to me about who you are." "That's not fair," Ethan snapped. "No," Lavra said. "It's finally fair." She stood up, walked straight toward Malik. Ethan lurched up from his chair. Laura. "Don't." But she ignored him. "Malik," she said, extending a hand. "Your speech. Thank you. It meant more than you know." Malik shook her hand with quiet grace. Ethan saw it, and something inside him, cracked like ice under heat. Lavra returned to Ethan just long enough to say, "I'm going home. Alone." Mr. Ellis approached Malik with a look he hadn't seen before. "A mixture of pride and sorrow? There's something I never told you." Mr. Ellis said quietly, "You weren't admitted because the board believed in you. I argued for you, hard. They said Greenridge wasn't the right environment for a kid like you." Malik swallowed. "And you fought them anyway?" "I fought because I knew you didn't need this school. This school needed you." Malik's chest tightened. Even in his success. There were wounds he didn't realize were still tender. Inside the club. Ethan slipped into a quiet hallway and answered his buzzing phone. His father's voice was sharp. "Furious, what am I hearing about?" "A scene at the reunion? Why is your name tied to some viral story about bullying?" "Dad, it wasn't. You've embarrassed the family. Fix it." The line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone, hollow. His whole life, people cleaned up his messes. Tonight, everyone saw he was the mess. Someone screamed from across the terrace. "Oh my God, the group chat is on Twitter." Within seconds, everyone was looking at their phones. There it was. $20 says he shows up in a secondhand suit. Probably still takes the bus. Ethan Whitmore underneath it. A viral caption. He arrived in a helicopter he owns. The entire internet was laughing. Ethan turned pale. Whispers erupted. He said that? He really wrote that? What is wrong with him? Lavra didn't return. His friends drifted away. Even Chase muttered, "Dude, you deserve whatever's coming." Malik wasn't petty, he wasn't cruel. But he saw the irony. The man who spent 4 years making sure Malik ate alone was now sitting isolated at his own reunion. Malik walked over. Ethan flinched when he approached, as if expecting a blow. Malik sat down across from him. Ethan couldn't lift his head. "You came to humiliate me," Malik said softly. Ethan swallowed. "Hard. I know. You thought I stayed small? I did. You thought you still had power over me? I did." Malik leaned back. "You don't." The words weren't cruel, they were freeing, for both of them. Ethan's eyes watered. Not from pity, but from collapse. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Malik studied him. Ethan rarely looked small. Tonight, he looked like a child whose hands were suddenly empty. "I accept your apology," Malik said. "Not for who you were, but for who you still have a chance to become." Ethan looked up, stunned. Malik continued. "Growth is possible. You just have to choose it." And then Malik stood, left him with his shame. Left him with his chance. A group gathered near the landing pad for a picture. Mr. Ellis. Jordan. Ava. Former classmates who'd grown, people who'd learned, people Malik would actually keep in his life. Someone asked, "Malik, want the helicopter in the background?" He shook his head. "No, put Mr. Ellis in the center instead." The camera clicked. The photo would go viral. Not because Malik was in it, but because he chose to shine the light on someone who lifted him up. As he and Jordan walked back to the helicopter, someone called out, Malik, why did you really come? Tonight? He stopped turned double quotes for the kid I used to be. He said, and for anyone who thinks they're stuck in someone else's story. Then he boarded the helicopter. Rotor spun, wind rose, lights shimmered on the lawn. The crowd watched. Him lift off, not as the charity kid, not as the bullied boy, but as a man who outgrew the world that once tried to shrink him. Ethan watched. Not with anger, with the sting of truth. Because tonight, Malik didn't win, he evolved. And Ethan didn't lose. He was simply left behind. The next morning, sunlight spilled across Malik's apartment as he brewed coffee. The first moment of quiet after a night that would ripple through thousands of lives. His phone buzzed. Nonstop. Messages. Mentions. Headlines. Double quotes. Black CEO returns to reunion in helicopter he owns. Bullies mock him. Karma arrives from the sky. A masterclass in grace. But Malik ignored most of it because the story wasn't about the helicopter or the money or the shock on their faces. It was about a much deeper truth. He never needed their validation to become who he was. He only needed to release their power over him. The world saw. A comeback story. Malik saw a release. **** People misunderstand success. They think revenge is about grand gestures. Public humiliation. Returning. With power and rubbing it in. But Malik didn't feel victorious when Ethan cried, or when people apologized. Or when his story went viral. He felt victorious the moment he walked into that reunion and didn't feel fear. The moment the past didn't own him anymore. The moment he realized, I grew. They didn't, that's enough. The helicopter was just a symbol, a physical representation of elevation. What mattered was the internal one. Ethan spent the next weeks facing consequences he'd never faced in his entire privileged life. Friends distanced. His fiancée left. His father blamed him. His coworkers whispered. The internet made him an example. But here's the real tragedy for people like Ethan. They peak early because they never learn to rise. Comfort is their prison. Malik didn't destroy Ethan's life. He simply lived his own, and that alone exposed the truth. Cruelty ages poorly. Growth ages beautifully. People like Malik learn to endure things children never should. Isolation. Humiliation. Systemic bias. Invisible. Rules everyone else seems to follow instinctively. But they also develop things others never will. Resilience. Focus. Perspective. Fire. Survivors aren't born great. They're forged. Every insult hammered Malik into shape. Every shove sharpened him. Every silent teacher taught him self-reliance. He didn't rise in spite of what they did. He rose because he chose to become more than what they tried to make him. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you didn't belong, if you've ever been made the punchline, if you've ever eaten lunch alone, if you've ever been the only one in a room, if you've ever felt surrounded by people who only see your skin, not your skill, hear this. Their opinion is not your limit. Their cruelty is not your prophecy. Their doubt is not your truth. You are building something they cannot see yet. You are more powerful than the place that tried to define you. Your future doesn't need their permission to unfold. One day, the world that ignored you will have no choice but to notice. And on that day, you won't be coming back for revenge. You'll be coming back to close a chapter you outgrew a long time ago. Some people try to make you small. The best response is not anger. Not revenge. Not bitterness. It's becoming someone. They cannot ignore. And when you rise, you don't rise to hurt them. You rise to honor the part of you that survived them, because the sky was never the limit. It was only the beginning.